Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu, mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services. Discover how to overcome self-sabotage in this interview with Kam Knight. Now, Kam Knight is a coach, international speaker who has touched the lives of more than 500,000 people with his teachings. And he's a best-selling author of a dozen books in the area of mental performance and personal mastery. He's known for bringing fresh solutions and insights that are a rare departure from traditional ideas. And because of his fresh perspectives, his books have become the gold standard for their respective topics, which have helped over 500,000 people worldwide. And when he's not coaching or writing, he is traveling, having traveled in more than 100 countries around the world. And he's an expert in talking about internal resistance, self-sabotage, and imposter syndrome. Now, the first question I have for you is, what is the secret to your success?
Well, there's a lot of secrets that have helped me, but I think if there was one core thing that was the most helpful in my life, it was never giving up. And, I'll be the first one to admit that I was never the smartest, the brightest, most talented, most athletic, most well-spoken person. And more or less, I didn't really have a lot of skills just out of the bat that a lot of people may have. But one thing that I've always had was this inner push to never give up anything I started. No matter how tough things got, no matter how challenging, how painful, no matter how much of a struggle, where my mind was like, oh, you should just give up, it's time to throw in the towel. I had this ability to just stick with things. And this has been a really key skill, I guess, or trait, because the more I have been able to stick with things, the more I've been eventually able to get to and accomplish the things that I wanted to.
Thank you. Now, I believe any battle can be won if you can conquer the battle between your ears. And if you can overcome self-sabotage and imposter syndrome. So as a high achiever myself, I have personally struggled so much with self-sabotage and with imposter syndrome. Yeah. So I'm so curious to know how you advise entrepreneurs to overcome self-sabotage.
So one of the things that's really important for a person to understand is that anytime they go out to do something, there's a part of their mind that's going to work against it or stop it. So desire does not equate to action, or desire does not equate to having. What that means is just because you want something, no matter how badly you want it, doesn't mean you'll be able to get it or take the necessary steps to get it. And it's not because it's you or it's because, your upbringing. It's because it's just the way the mind is built. And everyone experiences this. And so if a person can go in with the mindset that, hey, there's going to be parts of me that are going to actively work to stop me and keep me from growing and making progress, then we can actually build in a plan or have an awareness or have the expectation that things aren't going to be as easy as we want it to be or as easy as we think it should be, because we're going to have to be battling ourselves. And if we can come in that awareness, it's going to really help a person be prepared for the challenges that come, whether it is in business or personal life.
Thank you. And what are the main causes of self-sabotage, and how can entrepreneurs overcome them?
Okay, so what's really important to understand is that anytime a decision or an option or a course of action stands before you, that decision gets analyzed by the brain using a whole host of criteria. And if the decision is not in line with the criteria, the brain will prevent action. And so it helps to think about standing before a panel of judges or a board of directors. Every decision that comes up must go through them. If even one of the members is against the idea, it will not pass. And so each member is like a criteria the mind evaluates. So more or less, anytime you go out to do something, your mind's gonna go through a checklist of things to see if you should do it. And there's many things that the mind evaluates, and some of the more common things or some of the more talked about things that a person may have already heard has to do with limiting beliefs and habits and comfort zones. Those are things that are going to stop them. But there's even deeper things that are going on that's going to stop a person. For example, self-image. A lot of times people create this self-image of themselves as being smart, intelligent, tech-savvy, a great musician, artist, or someone who has a great story. But they'll never apply themselves, or put themselves on stage, or try that thing that they have this great self-image of. Because if it doesn't go well, or if they've experienced difficulty, then they have to confront the fact that they're not this great self-image they created. So it's much easier to not do the thing and hold on to that self-image than to actually do it and face the possibility that they're not this great self-image. And so our brain will stop us if it thinks that what we're trying to do will mean that we have to confront or face the possibility we're not as great as the self-image we created. So that's one of the reasons that it'll stop us. Another reason it'll stop us is that anytime we set out to do something, our mind is thinking about all the things that can happen or go wrong. And a great example for this is, as you had said, I've traveled a lot. I've traveled to over 100 countries. And many people have followed my journey, have been inspired by it, and regularly ask me, hey, ask me for tips about how to travel. And I can give a person like some really fantastic tips to travel very cheaply, safely, and easily. And they'll be very excited and motivated to start, but rarely will they ever follow through. And after trying to figure out what was going on, I realized that their brain was processing all the things that could go wrong. What if they buy the wrong flight, book it for the wrong date? What if they miss their flight and they can't get to the airport? What if they don't pack everything in their luggage? What if their luggage gets lost? What if they get pickpocketed, robbed, or their hotel isn't nice? And so anytime we do something, our brain is processing all these what if scenarios. And we don't notice the processing happen, but it's running in the background. And if the brain thinks there's too many like possibilities of things going wrong, it'll put the brakes on our lives. And we won't know what the reasons are. We'll just have this feeling like we're hitting up against this impenetrable wall. And so that's another reason that the mind will stop us. And there's other stuff that goes on as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. So what can entrepreneurs do to stop this self-sabotage and continue to achieve peak performance time after time after time?
So again, it comes down to realizing this aspect of the mind that anytime a decision or option stands before them, a part of their mind is going to analyze a decision to see if they can do it or if it's going to be achievable for them. And a lot of times, what's really interesting is when our mind stops us, it doesn't tell us that it's going to stop us, and it doesn't give us a reason. It doesn't say, hey, Lily, this thing that you're trying to do, well, it goes against the self-image that we're upholding, so I can't let you do it. Or this thing that you're trying to do, it goes against habit, so we're just going to sit here and do nothing. That's not how the brain works. It uses manipulative tricks. And a lot of those tricks put us into all sorts of avoidance behaviors where we think we're making progress, but we're really not. So it's important to be aware of what the person is doing and if it's really leading them to the outcomes that they desire, or is it giving them the illusion that it's leading them there. And it's important to be really aware of that so we can course correct anytime our mind is trying to lead us astray. So this is one of the reasons. Another way, or this is one of the ways a person can make sure they stay on the straight and narrow and not get caught up in detours. But when it comes to resistance, it's not a simple cookie cutter solution. It really depends on what the cause of the resistance is. So if they're being stopped because it's self-image, if they're being stopped because their mind is processing all these what if scenarios, or if they're being stopped for other reasons, it helps to look at that reasons and use tools that help counter that. And so for something like self-image, a simple solution is doing things like self-talk, because our self-talk can help us reprogram our self-image to act in accordance with this. And for me, self-talk, a lot of people get confused what it is. It's really statements that you say or repeat to yourself of the changes you want to have or have happen. So a lot of times people think self-talk is positive thinking, but they're very different. And I don't want people to confuse that, because self-talk is actually about repeating a set of statements of the direction they want to go in. For example, if somebody wants to become a more confident and assertive person, they would repeat statements like, I'm a strong, confident person. I'm a strong, confident person. I communicate my thoughts, ideas, and needs easily and effortlessly. And if they repeat that statement over, it creates that self-image that they're trying to form or uphold to get them in the direction they're going. And we can use self-talk statements in a lot of areas in our life, including business. And so if a person's trying to be more successful, they would repeat statements that are in line with that. You know, I'm a do it now person. I do things now. I finish things right away. And repeating such a statement will create the patterns in their brain to act those things out and stay on the straight and narrow.
Thank you. Is there any connection between imposter syndrome and self-sabotage?
So it's part of it. So like I said, anytime a decision is presented, our brain will go through all sorts of reasons and checklists to see if the person should do it. And imposter syndrome is one of the things that'll come up. It'll say, is this something that I am capable of doing? Is this something that I am worthy or deserving of doing? And in many ways, imposter syndrome has a lot of elements of deserving, feeling worthy, and having the capability of. And so when the brain does process, hey, or look at, am I worthy of it? Am I deserving of it? Do I believe I can do it? And if the answers are no, then the brain will prevent action. And again, a lot of times it won't tell us why it's preventing action. We'll just feel like we can't do the thing no matter how much we try, or we'll fall into avoidance behavior that cleverly and slyly pull us away from the thing that we're trying to do.
Thank you. What are the most useful tools entrepreneurs can use in order to overcome self-sabotage and imposter syndrome, aside from what you've already mentioned?
Yeah, so a really good tool that I really like using, because when it comes to resistance, it's about doing the simplest things that create the most action or the biggest results. Because when we have resistance, it's really hard to take action in the first place, and it's hard to take the big actions or the ones that are difficult. So I really like focusing on simple things, which is why I mentioned self-talk. It's one of the simplest solutions a person can use. But another simple thing a person can do is, if they're having a difficult time doing something, whatever it is that they can close their eyes and see themselves doing the thing that they want and how they want. And I know it sounds like it's too easy, but it's one of the easiest ways to kind of create repetition in our body to be able to act things out. Because when it comes down to taking action and developing positive habits, it's all about repetition. Now, it doesn't mean that repetition has to be physical. It could be in our mind as well. So if we can just act out what it is that we want to do and try to do it as much as possible, people will be surprised how much they'll do it, what they imagine in their head, they actually end up acting out in real life. And what's really cool about this technique is that it could be done while someone is laying in bed, when right before going to bed or when you're waking up. There's that moment where you're not really doing anything, you're just kind of like staring at the ceiling. We can use that time to just close our eyes and imagine what it is that we want to do the next day, or what it is that we're trying to do that we're having a hard time doing, and just do it. And once the brain can see that, oh yeah, doing it is not so bad, and we can create the neural patterns in our brain, it becomes much easier to do.
Wow, that's so insightful. And can I ask you, how did you become an awakened Titan? And how did you awaken to this power that you have to help 500,000 people?
I think it all started when I was about to start my first job out of college. I was extremely nervous. It was at a time when the economy wasn't really great. It took me a lot of effort to find a job, and once I finally found it, I was very nervous about being able to hold on and to keep that job. And I remember one day I was at Barnes and Nobles, and I was just for some reason, I was at the audio section. And back then, the audio section were tapes. And I saw a couple tapes that were said things like overcome fear or reduce anxiety. And I'm like, all right, I can use that. So I bought the tapes, and they turned out to be affirmation tapes. They had some really powerful affirmation scripts. And I didn't know anything about affirmations and self-talk and personal development, any of that. But because I was in a position where I was willing to try anything, I did. And they were really helpful. I was kind of quite surprised how helpful they were. And I didn't think it was anything big or special, or if it was even the tapes that helped. But then the more I got into personal development, the more I started hearing about it. I read a book by what's her name, Susan Jeffers, called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. She talked about it, and then I read the book Think and Grow Rich, and he talked about it. And then I read other books like How to Talk to Yourself by Chad, or What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Chad Helmstetter. And it just started reinforcing, wow, like this is a really powerful thing where we can actually change who we are, and at the same time change our behaviors through simple techniques that I have described. And through that, it really was like this big awakening for me, because prior to that, I used to think I had a fixed mindset, like I was born a certain way, and that was it. There wasn't anything I could do to change it. And that feeling really felt real, and I lived it as if it was real, and no one could say anything to convince me otherwise. But once I started to come across these tools, and I could really change what was going on internally and how those internal changes manifested in my life, it was just like, yeah.
Thank you. And how did that expand into helping 500,000 people?
Well, once I started realizing that I had more potential, and I was coming across material that was giving me the motivation and desire to do more and have more and be more. And interestingly enough, it didn't solve all my problems. I kind of started confronting things like resistance. It's like, why is it if I want to do something, no matter how much I want to do it, I can't? I started really getting deeper into understanding what all the different reasons were to help me. And then when I would see people struggling, it's like, oh yeah, I see what's going on. They're hitting up against this wall called resistance. And I would tell them about it, and they'd get really positive benefits. And then, I started writing about it. And in the beginning, I was had resistance to getting my books out there. But once I did, and I got positive feedback, I realized I was onto something. And from there, it's just been a snowball effect.
Okay, wow, sounds very exciting. So, how can entrepreneurs become awakened titans themselves so they can awaken to their full potential and remove completely self-sabotage and imposter syndrome from their lives?
I think it comes down to a three-step formula that helped me. And one is so as I mentioned, we have a part of our brain that is designed to hold us back. And then we have another part of our brain that creates wants and desires. So the part of the brain that creates wants and desires doesn't check to see if our energy, time, and resources are limited. It simply creates wants. And it's creating endless wants and desires one after another, more than any one person can achieve. And you can think of this part of the brain, which I call the wanting mechanism, as a simple on-off switch that gets flipped based on certain cues. It sees someone with a nice pair of shoes and it wants it. The latest iPhone comes out and it wants that too. Someone attractive walks by and it wants that as well. And this wanting mechanism will create so many wants that it's impossible for us to achieve it. And so our wants become a hindrance in themselves. So the first step is to contain the wanting mechanism, because it will kind of go out of control and pull us in all sorts of directions and prevents us from focusing on any one. And the way to do that is to really like pick one or two desires and cut out all the rest. Cut out any sort of stimuli or triggers that could stimulate the wanting mechanism to pull us in all these directions. And that can mean different things for different people. For me, much of my life, I struggle with an overactive wanting mechanism. And what I found was to cut out television, movies, social media, video games, YouTube, podcasts, reading, internet articles, all those things were always stimulating me and distracting me in all sorts of directions. So a person needs to find out what they need to do for themselves to cut everything out so they can focus on the one or two things that's going to move the needle forward in their life. Two is consistency. I think showing up on a regular basis, because life is not about how hard you work. It's about how consistent you are in effort. And that's because the way the mind and body are built, we're either growing or we're regressing. There's no in between. There's no working on something for a few months and keeping that skill forever. There's no dieting and exercising for 6 months and being thin and healthy for the rest of our lives. That's not how we're built. The way we're built is as soon as we stop doing something, we start regressing in it. And so if we can just show up on a regular basis, it doesn't have to be hard work, but just consistent work, then those small changes or the small wins that we have compound over time. So that's step two. And then step three is reprogramming. We need to reprogram our mind and body to act out and create behaviors that move us in the direction we want. Because to do it consciously and to battle our unconscious efforts, it's very draining and it can get exhausting. And then after a while, we give up. But if there is no battle, if our internal is aligned with what we want externally, then it just becomes a lot easier. And two of the best tools I think out there to do that is stuff that I talked about, which is the self-talk and imagining themselves doing the things that they want in their head. So those three.
Thank you. And is there any reward built into this program that you have that, let's say, rewards the entrepreneurs for doing certain things and keeps them on the right track?
Yeah, rewards are really important because it helps us get the positive feelings and the rewards that we're seeking. So a lot of times when we're doing something or want to achieve something or get to a certain place, at the end of the day, it comes down to we're seeking some sort of positive feelings. And the longer or harder it is to finish a task or a goal, the longer that reward is delayed. And the harder it becomes to stick with it. So in these instances, what I recommend people do is one of three things. One is to take their goal or their task or activity and break it down into milestones and reward themselves at each milestone. And that'll keep the impatience at bay so they keep moving forward. The other way you can get rewards is to simply look back at the progress you've made and the effort you put in. Because the way the brain works, it tends to ignore how much time and effort we've already put in and always looks at how far the end destination is. So if we can help our brain look at the progress we made, that can create enough positive feelings and reward that we're seeking. And by doing it enough times, it'll give us the necessary motivation to continue. And the other way is also to not necessarily rely on the activity or the goal for the positive feelings, but to find ways to get it elsewhere. So I recommend that people get into a habit of doing things that they really enjoy. Maybe it's dancing or rock climbing or exercise that gives them positive feelings so they don't need to rely on it from their task or goal. Because if a person can consistently get the positive feelings they want, they won't be so impatient with the task, activity, or their goal that they're working on.
Thank you. I find that, for example, when I'm doing stuff that I really like dancing, or going for a walk or swimming, I find that when I have to work right after, it just feels a lot easier. And I think that it's in those moments when you are having so much fun that you feel like you're in flow. And then it's almost like that flow kind of tends to continue with your work and with anything else you're aiming to do, whether it's organizing your house or anything. And I find that the opposite is true as well. When you're struggling with something and you're not doing something that you love for too long, that's when you start to see kind of like self-sabotage everywhere, where you're making it difficult for yourself to even complete a task that maybe shouldn't take you that long. And it's all about maybe doing a lot more of those little things that give you a lot of joy. And when you do that, that kind of brings you up to this flow. And when you're in flow, it's like everything feels so easy. And then, of course, there are certain things that will never be easy for you. Like, for example, I don't like doing anything technical. For example, like setting up my lights, or I know sometimes even the Zoom, when it messes up, then I call my team to fix it, or my partner. And I don't know if it will ever become easy. And I just have to accept that that's not my thing, and to get a team to help me with those sort of things. And if I tried to do it, it would frustrate me. And of course I would self-sabotage. I would be like hesitating and procrastinating and trying to do it in 100 hours because it's just not my thing, right? So there's certain things that you just have to get help for, and you don't have to aim to do it yourself. Just aim to be working in your flow, and as much as possible get help for those things that are not kind of keeping you in your element. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, completely, 100%. And this is actually one of the ways self-sabotage can manifest, or one of the ways that our resistance can keep us from doing something. And so we all have these tasks that are kind of simple and easy to do, that don't take a lot of time, that we don't really enjoy doing it. And like you said, for you it's tech, and for me sometimes it can be tech too, especially when I'm doing social media videos. I don't like doing the whole lighting stuff. But those little things create these bottlenecks in our lives, where when we don't finish that little thing, we can't do the other stuff. And because we can't do the other stuff, we can't do the things beyond that. So that little thing can be the very thing that keeps us from moving forward. And resistance loves those little things. it'll keep you procrastinating on those little things, because as long as you procrastinate on that little thing, then you can't do the other thing that the brain is trying to prevent you from doing. And so it's really important to find those things in your schedule or life that you don't like doing and outsource them, or get somebody else to do it, or figure out how you can call up the energy to make sure you do them, because it will be the bottleneck that hinders progress.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and what is your message to entrepreneurs worldwide?
My message is something I kind of already said, and I really want to hit home, is that desire does not equate to having. Just because you want something doesn't mean you'll take the necessary steps to get it. And that's one of the most important messages I can give somebody, because a lot of times people will get motivated and excited and, have this emotional charge to go after something and do something with their life, whether it's in that entrepreneurial or personal world. And they think just because they have the desire that that's going to be enough. And it's not. In fact, that's just the first step. And sometimes that desire can create the resistance to doing it. And the more desire we have, the more resistance will show up. And it's really important to understand that there's a good chance that there's a part of themselves are going to actively work to keep that from happening. And this is why that quote, "You are your own worst enemy," it's so popular or famous, is because it really speaks to this part of this human condition. And if they really want to, make progress and move forward in their life, they need to understand that there is going to be a part of them that's going to be stopping them, and to plan and prepare for that, and to know what they need to do to be able to move past it.
That was such great information. So tell us, Kam, where can our listeners and watchers find you?
All right, so people can find me at my website, kamknight.com. That's KAMKNIGHT.com. And I've got a free gift for them. It's 5 tools to end procrastination, self-sabotage. And again, they can get that at kamknight.com.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And stay tuned to the next episode. Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential, so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.